Hello and welcome back to the Bird's Eye View podcast. We are here on Tuesday, August 13th, coming off a exciting Toronto Blue Jays victory. What a debut for Will Wagner. 3 hits, a double, 2 singles, making some great defensive plays. We're going to get into kind of how the future is now for the 2025 and beyond Blue Jays. I'm your host, Zach Worden, joined as always by Jori Negin-Shecter. And Jori, what are your thoughts on Will Wagner Jr. and his insane debut last night?
I'm just saying that level of excellence is going to get awfully crowded when you have to add Bowden Francis, Will Wagner, Joey Loperfido figures out how to not strike out 50% of the time, and Jake Bloss throws something other than fastballs down the middle. But no, it was actually, sarcasm aside, really encouraging to see what Will Wagner brought to the team the other day, and it's been really exciting in relative terms to see some of the youth on this Blue Jays team show some promise. This is a team with a lost season, and I mean, you may notice if you've been listening to the last couple of episodes, we have talked very little about the product on the field because there hasn't been a lot to talk about other than Vlad, who we will also get into. But at least in the case of Will Wagner and the future Toronto Blue Jays, something to get excited about, at least according to the Twitter experts.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we talked a little bit about the Astros trade return, like we may have been a little bit on the downside of some people on Will Wagner, but I think overall, like, I mean, you look at his profile and he's obviously able to hit. He might not be able to hit for power, but he's going to be able to have nights like this where, it's not like he's screaming balls off the wall or anything like that, but he's hitting the ball hard, finding gaps in the infield and getting on base, which I think is pretty much all you're going to be able to ask from him. Like, he's not going to come up and be a guy that's going to hit 20-25 home runs. Like, he's going to be a guy that you're going to be looking to hit like 280 and get on base like 34-35% of the time and kind of be a table setter. Like, I mean, I think he would be an ideal kind of 8-9 guy that you can get in the lineup and get on base for the top of your order. I think the way that the Blue Jays construct their lineup already is, we can get into lineup specifics and we kind of have in the past where, like, obviously you want your best hitter hitting second, you want like your best on base guy leading off. Like, we've talked about Davis Schneider and Spencer Horwitz being like potential leadoffs guys. Like, I mean, I guess Wagner could kind of fit that profile as a guy who kind of gets on and sets the table. But overall, I think really encouraging debut and kind of excited to see his progress over the rest of the year.
Well, you've mentioned a couple of guys, and I think also you've got guys like De Los Santos as well. I mean, there's a couple of those second baseman, fringy, quad A kind of types right now that are fighting for a spot on the 2025 Toronto Blue Jays. And obviously, Davis Schneider got that early start last season, but has basically been a non-factor since about, call it June. And then you've got Horwitz, who had a really, really great start to this year and has also faded a little bit. So maybe this is a bit of an opening for a Will Wagner type, like this is going to be a bit of a process, a bit of a feeling out process for who is going to become a part of the Blue Jays' future plans, right? I mean, and even look at, again, I mentioned Joey Loperfido has struggled a little bit. How do expectations for him change, right? And it's obviously been a very short sample. It's been roughly 2 weeks or so. But by and large, I think the early returns on Wagner, at least, starting with his AAA numbers, obviously was raking in Buffalo, in part why he forced the Blue Jays' hand to get this opportunity. And then obviously his first time up with the Blue Jays, that 3-hit game, that to me seems to indicate, maybe we got a piece here. Maybe this is someone that the Blue Jays look at and they're like, oh, we have something we can work with.
Yeah, I think you look at the game, right? And obviously the 3 hits is nice. Like, it stands out. He's only the 4th Blue Jay to have 3 hits in his major league debut. But to me, I mean, I think that there were a couple things kind of like beyond the box score that really stand out. I mean, you look at the exit velos for all 4 of his at-bats. I mean, he went 104.5 on the double, 99.1 on the single, 105.9 on the next single, and then 97.9 and 374 feet on the fly out to center. And like, for a guy who is going to be like a bat to ball guy, like, those are really, really, really good numbers, right? And even if some of those balls were hit firmly into the ground, right? Like, I mean, he's still hitting it hard. Like, he's running a 100% hard hit rate right now, which, obviously is not going to continue. But I think that's really exciting. I think the defense also, for a guy who all reports have said is a below average fielder, like, he made a couple nice plays I think John Schneider said like the expectation is for him to make routine plays, and he made a couple non-routine plays last night. And obviously, I can't imagine the adrenaline he had flowing yesterday in your major league debut, and especially performing that well. So I think seeing the defense play up a little bit and seeing the exit velocities is a really encouraging sign for him going forward, especially with the type of profile of a hitter that he is.
Yeah, and it's not like the Blue Jays have an elite defensive second baseman waiting in the wings, right? I think of again, Horwitz is basically a converted first baseman who has looked passable at second at times. You look at a guy like again, I mentioned Schneider, he's maybe a guy there. I mean, Leo Jimenez is probably the most defensively sound, is looks like a shortstop, really, but it would translate to second base. So if he's going to differentiate himself, it's going to be with average to moderately above average glove and the ability to hit. And last night he showed both of those. So it's just going to be a matter of continuing that. So I think just by and large, right? It's exactly what you kind of wanted to see from him. Now, how much do you want to read into one game? I mean, I can tell you, I'm not going to read that much into it. I mean, we'll see how he continues to adjust, but like not to flame you on live air here, so to speak, but you were definitely lower on Will Wagner than the bulk of you know I'd say Blue Jays fandom.
Yeah, I mean, like it's a player who I think in how many years has he been a pro for at this point? Like 4 or 5 years, and he's hit like maybe 20 career professional home runs. And the exit velocities are nice, but he's a guy who like isn't gonna get the most out of those because his career like opposite field rate has generally been higher than his career pull rate. So he's not gonna be getting to a lot of that power. So he's gonna be like a very much hit the ball hard in play. And you kind of look at his swing, right? Like it's not a swing geared for power. It's a very flat swing, whether it's at the top of the zone or at the bottom of the zone. The bat angle doesn't get very vertical. He doesn't get over top of it, so he's not going to be hitting the ball in the air a ton. Obviously, he hits the ball on the ground at a fairly high clip. Like I mean, he's coming over running near 50% ground ball rates. And so like yeah, like I mean, I think that the ceiling is certainly limited. But I think, as far as like a Spencer Horwitz, Will Wagner type, like I mean, those are a type of player that are nice to have as far as guys you can get on base, but you probably don't want to be stacking your lineup with those guys.
Which is kind of been the it's kind of been the MO of this front office. So I mean, I don't know, we'll see. I think I would basically leave it, and I'm pretty happy with what we saw yesterday out of Will Wagner. And I think that expectations, well, maybe should be tempered. Uh, just nice
Hey,
to have some youth.
yes, I'll say this for the way that the season has gone, to see like a guy come up and provide a really nice story is really encouraging. And like I tweeted this out yesterday, there's nothing like seeing guys like achieve their dreams and then perform well. Like I mean,
Of
obviously like
course.
it's more narrative based than anything, but like it's really exciting just to see like the human side of that, and see guys like come up and perform well in their debuts.
Absolutely. And I mean, listen, like your first, it's not Dodger Stadium, but it's not the worst place to, Halo's ballpark's a nice ballpark too. It's not the worst place to pick up your first big league knock.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, I was kind of confused why they didn't have Billy Wagner up on the broadcast. They always showed the
Well, I was
parents.
I was
I was
wondering
like,
that
where
too.
is this dude sitting? Like was he in the bowels? Like he must have been in a box, right? Like it's Billy Wagner.
He had to have been there, right? You'd think.
Well, yeah, because after the game, Will Wagner was like he was doing his post game interview, and he said that he was getting ready for the game, and he was getting texts from his girlfriends and from his dad that there weren't tickets left for them.
Oh
And
my
because he
god.
because he forgot, like as he was going through pregame, to line up the tickets for them.
Oh my god. That's crazy.
But Billy Wagner, like when you
He's got
become
does he not have the
the
gold?
lifetime pass,
Yeah.
yeah, as soon as you have 10 years of service time, you get the gold pass. So I don't know, but yeah, hopefully we'll hear from Billy Wagner at some point. I think it'd be pretty cool if to
Oh
get
yeah.
some insight from him for sure.
Oh yeah.
One thing I want to have a conversation with it, like I mean, Will Wagner in the future is a very interesting conversation because, you know, ideally I think going forward, like the Blue Jays aren't going to have all of Ernie Clement, Spencer Horwitz, Will Wagner, Davis Schneider, Luis De Los Santos, Leo Jimenez. Like, I mean, I don't think that you're gonna have all those guys on the roster, right? So for Will Wagner to earn his spot on the 2025 Toronto Blue Jays, do you think that he needs to lean into like the hitter that he's been throughout his career, like kind of this high on base guy that hits the ball to all fields? Or would you like to see him maybe change his approach a little bit, pull the ball more often, try and get the ball in the air, even if it comes at even if it sacrifices some of what he is right now. And I say that saying that like perhaps a change in his swing, his approach could very much not work out for him.
Well, I mean, I think of like yesterday, he was pulling the ball with his base hits, right? And you would figure that part of that was that even, maybe the Halos defense was playing him to go the other way, right? So I I would figure again, just based on the way that this Blue Jays team operates, that they probably lean a little bit more towards the go the other way approach, or him kind of maintaining the approach that he's gotten to the big leagues with. Now I think for him, the lack of power maybe makes trying to sell out for it and trying to pull the ball more a little bit of a difficult task, because he's just not going to have the raw power to just do damage, so to speak.
I mean,
But
we were looking it up and like he had the max exit velo of 110.7,
like
I
how
believe
much
in
how
AAA.
much is he going to be doing that realistically against A, big league pitching, and B, in a way that's still going to be effective, because he's probably going to do that, but he's going to pound it into the dirt, right?
Yeah, I mean it will be interesting because like I mean we talk about that, but I mean also his pull rate with Buffalo, and again, I mean this is like the smallest sample size that you can look at. I mean it's 7 games with the Bisons, but his pull rate was significantly higher with Buffalo than it was before. So I don't know if that's something that they like are having him try to do, or if it's just kind of the way that it turned out for him. Because like I mean his pull rate in Buffalo was 52.4%. And in Sugarland with Houston, it was 36.6.
Yeah,
And his
so that's a
oppo
healthy
rate
jump, but
there
it's
was like 42.2.
yeah, but it's also such a small sample size with the
Yeah.
Bisons, right? So it's hard to even kind of speak to the validity of that. I mean, maybe they said to him, "Hey, we want you to try to pull the ball and see what you can do with it." I mean, a 110 exit velo, like that'll play, but like it's probably the 99th percentile of outcomes for him, right? Like he's probably not going to be barreling balls up in that kind of way, especially at the big league level.
Well, I think what was because his average exit velo is around 88. So like there's a pretty big gap there between the
Yeah.
max and the average.
Yeah, so we'd have to really kind of muscle up a pitch to do that consistently. Now, I don't think that necessarily, damns him to a life as a, you know, utility man, extra infielder, occasional corner outfielder if he plays their kind of Kevin Biggio esque role. But I just wonder how he's going to sustain any kind of long-term success at the big leagues if he is going to be a guy that is just kind of hitting flares the other way.
Yeah, I mean you look at it right, like I mean he didn't have the highest barrel percentage in AAA, right? And I think barrel percentage is pretty indicative of like high level success. So obviously there might be a little bit of a come down, but the thing that I think that maybe I've overlooked a little bit is just like I mean he's done it everywhere, right? Like I mean his approach has obviously worked for him at every level. I think looking through his minor league profile, he's never had a WRC plus below 120 other than 72 games at Double A in 2022 where it was 98. And I think like with the obviously elite approach he essentially never chases, and the like solid enough exit velocities. Like I mean, we saw it last night, and just like how he puts the barrel on the ball, like kind of like a sweet spot merchant type a little bit. I think like the track record suggests that there is a chance that like you can kind of look at his high BABIPs in the minor leagues and say, well, yeah, that's not going to sustain at the major league level. But I mean, he's kind of done it everywhere he's been. So is there a chance that he can kind of be this like 300, 360 OBP guy?
I
Like,
mean, that seems like a huge ask. And even if he was that, right? Like, how much power is he realistically going to generate that he's going to be that above average of a hitter? I mean, with a
yeah,
360 on base, you're going to be an above average hitter. That much is pretty much not a given, but it's about as close to a given as you're going to get. But beyond that, is he going to be a 430 power guy, like a slug guy? Like, I don't know, like a 400 slug guy. Like,
I, I, I
I don't know.
yeah, I think the cautionary tale here is Spencer Horwitz and David Schneider, right? Where they both come up and have instant success, and the league adjusts to them, and things slow down a little bit for both of them to the point where David Schneider is no longer an everyday player and is quite frankly looking like not a key piece of the 2025 roster, despite kind of all the moments that he's had since making his debut. So the cautionary tale there for Will Wagner is that once the league sees enough of him, even if he's like, this is assuming that his hot start continues, right? And once the league sees enough of him and adjusts back to him, and how is he able to make that adjustment back to the league, which
So hold on. So
the guys on the team are still working on, right?
here's a crazy question. Does this just become a situation where it's like a pipeline of these quad A types, and it's
He's
just
just
you
playing the
keep
hot
sending
hand.
them it? I mean, that seems like maybe what they're gonna do.
I mean, you could, but like, I mean, I think there's a lot of value in having like some stability. Mark Shapiro's quote the other day that he values
He values
stability,
continuity everywhere
continuity and
except
stability.
second base.
Yeah, there's there's been a little bit of a revolving door there this year, but no,
It's not just this year. It's been a revolving door the
hey, when
entire
when you when
time.
you pump out three straight all-star second baseman, there's no complaining.
Dude, I suppose not. I guess we'll see what the next I'll see what the next wave has in store.
Okay, last thing on Will Wagner, because I feel like we kind of touched on it a lot, but I mean, obviously last night's game against the Angels, not the highest level of opponents, but again, can't control your opponents. Very impressive debut nonetheless, not trying to take anything away from him. What are your kind of expectations for him the rest of the season? Like, what is
I
it
told
that
you off the
you're
top.
gonna
I told you off the top. We're talking level of excellence. We're talking him,
okay,
and we're talking.
okay.
No, what for me? Like, if he's just an average big leaguer, if he can do the Spencer Horwitz or any Clements, that to me is a win. To me, he doesn't really have to do that much to keep his name in the conversation. If he can sock a couple extra base hits here and there, if he can provide decent defense at second base, he's the new toy. Like, he has all the benefit of the doubt right now. And unless he starts striking out at a 46.5% clip, I would expect him to continue to get lots of runway because the Blue Jays are going to want to know what they have in Will Wagner.
Yeah, I think you look at the projection systems on Fangraphs, and I mean we probably look at Zips most likely, like Zips and Steamer, and I mean for him, Zips has him being like a 237 hitter, a 308 OBP, and a 345 slug, which is an 88 WRC plus. Um, I think that's a little bit low on Will
That seems
Wagner.
conservative. That seems
I
conservative.
I think that what you get from him is a higher walk rate there and a strikeout. Like they have him striking out 23.8% of the time, which I think is probably around right, but they only have him walking 8.6% of the time. I think you probably bump that up to around 10, 11% of the time. And then so that OBP creeps up. And I think that he hits the ball hard enough to not maintain a 237 average. I think he'll probably
Yeah.
be a little bit more than that.
Yeah, like there's enough to like about the toolkit that you figure he'll have some major league success, but just how much, I mean, remains to be seen. It's really just going to
Yeah.
be a matter of the way his path to being an above average major league player is providing decent defense at second base and being a league average hitter. And that to me will have enough value to make him a part of the Blue Jays, maybe not core, but a supplemental piece.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if he's getting on base a lot, he's going to be in the lineup.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to be. Um, so last night, not the only nice game for a young piece on the 2024 Toronto Blue Jays. I mean, Leo Jimenez hits his first career home run, And he's a very interesting piece because the Blue Jays, obviously, unsure when Bo Bichette's going to be returning. I know he went back to Florida after his quick visit to Toronto. And Leo Jimenez is kind of in this spot where is he going to be the backup shortstop on next year's roster? Is he going to be more than like a stopgap for Arjun Amala? Is there a spot for him to be like a positive major league contributor?
So before we hit the record button, I know I kind of was pumping his tires, but the more I think about it, the more I wonder exactly what his spot is in terms of just what exactly he is. And I like the toolkit. I like that he's shown a little bit of power of late. He's hit a bunch of doubles of late. He ran to his first big league homer. Like there are pieces here to a productive major league shortstop. I think the defense has looked good at times. I think he's shown a lot of athleticism. Like I like Leo Jimenez in theory. In practice, I wonder how good he can be and where that fits into a team with playoff aspirations and beyond, because he almost seems like another guy in that Schneider, Horwitz, Wagner mold, but he's a little bit younger, so he has time on his side and he plays a more premium position, right? But he doesn't hit as well, and seems like he maybe strikes out at a higher clip. Like this is a guy that has tools, just like a lot of these dudes do, but they're different tools. So is the fact that they're different tools enough to differentiate him from the rest of these guys? Do the Blue Jays care about exactly what about him makes him valuable? I mean, you think about the ability to play shortstop, but Ernie Clement looks like he's better than him, even though he's 5 years older. But does Ernie Clement factor into plans in 2025 and beyond, right? I just don't really know what Leo Jimenez necessarily is that someone else doesn't also provide maybe a little bit better.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing with him is like he plays good defense at short, right? Like, I mean, we know that like that's kind of what the calling card was. Like he's was a major league ready shortstop like last season, and it's kind of been all about the bat. And for him, I think if he can kind of be that solid defensive shortstop, he just has to be like a league average hitter to find a spot in the big leagues. And whether that's with the Blue Jays or somewhere else, I do think there'll be a place for him. Like, I mean, he this year, I mean, he's got a 7% barrel rate so far this year, which is really solid, especially for a rookie who might be lacking some of the like raw exit velocities, right? Like, I mean, I know his max EV right now is 104.3, and obviously it's probably a little bit higher at AAA. Um, but yeah, like I mean, I think there's enough in there to be a major league piece, and for him to probably be kind of that guy where he can fit in like a Dalton Varsho type mold, right? Like he got to provide the elite defense.
But I know,
And
but
obviously there would
that's
have
such
to
a
there
huge.
there there has to be like defensive strides to be Dalton Varsho. Like I mean, it's he's not going to be the best defender in baseball, right? So he's got to do a little bit more with the bat than Dalton Varsho would do.
Mhm.
And for him, I think he's hit the ball better than the results he's gotten. I mean, you look at all of his expected stats this year, and they're all higher than what the results have been. So I think for him, it's going to be a matter of just getting more time this year, sticking in the field. I think it would be nice to see him get some more reps at short. I know Ernie's been playing some shortstop with Bo out, but I think kind of getting Leo there and giving him those reps and then kind of letting the bat maybe figure itself out. He's running like a 30% K rate right now. So I think you get him into the lineup more often, and he's like one of the guys that really has to prove himself over the next month or so.
No, definitely. Like this is as much of a tryout for him as it is for any of the other guys basically in the middle infield that are looking for spots. Like this is kind of his opportunity because when Bo Bichette re-enters the picture, he's the starting shortstop, and it doesn't really matter if Leo Jimenez is hitting because it's going to be Bichette. Now, is Bichette done for the year? I don't think so, but I mean, if he is, obviously that opens a lot more runway. But realistically, this is his opportunity to show he belongs, right? Because next year he'll get some chances as an injury replacement, presumably, but he's not going to be the starting shortstop by April 2025.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing too, right? Like, I mean, for him at this point in his career, where he kind of has like the advantage, like you mentioned, that he has over a Spencer Horwitz, over a Will Wagner, over an Ernie Clement, is over a David Schneider, is that he's 23 right now, right? So he's got time to get to where those guys are, and it's very unlikely that he's going to be the Toronto Blue Jays starting shortstop in 2025. No matter what he does, he could go out and hit 10 home runs in September. I think it's unlikely that he is replacing Bo Bichette at short next season. So, with that said, all that he needs to do right now is prove that he can be a reliable defensive replacement and a guy who can maybe give you a little bit with the bat off the bench.
Yeah, and if he can do that, then that's all you kind of need from him, right? It is going to be because he plays that premium position. It is going to be a little bit more defense kind of focused in terms of where his value is compared to the other second baseman that we've mentioned ad nauseum here. So I think to me, just the biggest thing overall is just showing that he kind of belongs, right? And the power, I think, is the thing right now that has been most impressive to me is the ability to hit some of these balls either out or to hit for extra bases on the hole.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot here. For the 2025 Toronto Blue Jays, I want you to rank these players as most or from least likely to be on the 2025 roster to most likely to be on the
Yeah,
roster. And so this
yeah,
will be opening day.
yeah.
Okay. And so we're going to go uh Spencer Horwitz, Will Wagner, Davis Schneider, Leo Jimenez, Ernie Clement. Those five guys.
From least to most,
Yeah.
I think you're probably looking at Leo Jimenez fifth, Davis Schneider fourth, then probably Will Wagner. I am gonna say Horwitz, then Clement is the most likely. I'll say Clement over Horwitz
Clement
because
over Horwitz. That's
I
interesting.
think the positional versatility gives them an opportunity
Yeah.
for him to be a 26th man. Where if the Blue Jays go out and improve their middle infield prospects next year, or if they go out and sign someone, or if they go out and they trade away Bo Bichette or something, the pieces that come in and the rejigging that happens, I think it's more likely that Ernie Clement is part of the picture next year than basically any of those other pieces. Now, actually, I do wonder if he's a guy that you try to sell high on, but he's got so much team control that even also seems a little bit unlikely as well.
Yeah, I think Ernie has given you everything that you could ask for, right? Like we talked a little bit before we hit record. His defensive stats have been very good. He's been I know he kind of had the early season blip at third base, but like I mean the DRS has been really good for him at third. I believe we said he had 9 there. The OAA is 1, and then at short he's at 4 DRS and 3 OAA. So like the defense has been really good. The stick has been about what you could ask for, right? Like, I mean, he's a 92 WRC plus bat, which is close enough to league average to where the defense helps that. And he's like I said, he's a 2 win per 162 games player. So
Yeah, so like there's a lot of value in that, right?
yeah.
But it's not as a starter on a team that has aspirations of bigger things.
I think it makes sense your rankings because it does work where he is able to fill a lot of roles on the roster, right? Like, I mean, he's quick. He gives you a very individual profile at the plate, right? Like his standout tool is that he's not going to strike out. So if you know, if you have second and third with two outs and you need a pinch hit guy, like he's probably the guy that you're bringing to the plate over like a Joey Loperfido, right? Because you need a ball in play instead of a home run in that situation, kind of thing, right? And then yeah, the defense is really good. So I think it makes sense that there is very likely to be a spot for him on the 2025 Blue Jays. I'm curious, like your thoughts on Spencer Horwitz. Is that a guy that you think that you can pencil into the starting lineup next year?
No, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that you can pencil him in maybe in very fine ink. But I think that he's a guy that you're definitely going to be spending the offseason trying to upgrade on, because to me, he's been effective, but I don't really see him as a guy that can be what he's been for these Blue Jays, which has been basically a middle of the order bat. And he just isn't that.
Yeah, I mean with him too, like obviously he gets off to the hot start. Like I mean he had like a 200 WRC plus over like his first few weeks with the team, and now as things have come back to earth, I mean over his last 100 plate appearances, he's hitting 221, 290, 326 with one home run and like a couple of doubles. So, like I mean obviously that's the way that baseball works. You're not going to be the hottest hitter on the planet forever and you're not going to be the coldest hitter on the planet forever.
Well, I
So,
mean, you're not going to be the hottest hitter on the planet forever unless your name's Vlad Guerrero Jr.
well, we'll see how that goes over the next little while because he was very, very good over this hit streak. And we could kind of get into that. Just like one last thought on Horowitz. I mean, same thing for him that I'm kind of curious about with Will Wagner is for you to change your mind on him, what would he have to do over the last month?
Well, it would just have to be the hitting, right? He wouldn't have to get back to the, astronomically high levels he was at the beginning of his tenure with the Blue Jays, or beginning of his tenure this season with the Blue Jays. But he'd have to pick it up, and he'd have to be basically, I think it's kind of whoever the better hitter out of Will Wagner and Spencer Horwitz is likely who is going to be the guy in 2025. And you can toss Davis Schneider in that conversation as well, although he's a distant third right now. But there's nothing stopping David Schneider from getting hot over the next 2 weeks and him suddenly entering the conversation as, say maybe a Spencer Horwitz or a Will Wagner maybe slows down, right? So we'll see exactly what happens, but I do think it's gonna be very results oriented as opposed to maybe process oriented over the next couple of weeks.
Yes. Yeah, it would be nice to see David Schneider like kind of end the year on a run. I think
For
his
sure.
his struggles have been kind of disappointing
A bit of a bummer relative to
yeah,
maybe some of the other guys.
a bummer is a great way to put it because of just how good he was and how much fun it is to kind of see him when he's at his best. So,
For sure. For sure.
let's move on to Vlad. I mean, like you mentioned, we haven't talked a lot about the on-field play since the All-Star break, and over that time, Vlad didn't go a game without a hit until
He was
Sunday.
the best hitter in baseball. Like, there's no like didn't go with that. He was literally by I think WRC plus the best hitter in all of baseball during that stretch.
Yeah, I mean, when you're hitting 500 over 22 straight games, like you're probably going to be pretty good. And you know what? Like, I mean, here's the thing too about the hit streak is like when you look at the Joe DiMaggio hit streak or whatever, right? Like it's him. He's getting singles. The opposing pitchers were giving him hits or whatever. But Vlad, he hit 10 home runs over the streak and
Oh
like
yeah,
11 doubles. Like he was scorching the ball.
screaming
And
hot.
like I like watching it, like it was just a different Vlad, I think, than we've ever seen, even than the 2021 Vlad. I think it's probably fair to say that like that 2 3 week stretch was the best we've seen him ever.
For sure, and all the metrics would back that up by his. I think it was his rolling XWOB, but they showed it on the broadcast a few times, and it had reached levels that it wasn't reaching during his MVP runner-up season. Like he is back up to that level at this point. So now the question is, you got to extend him. What's he going to cost? And initially, it sounded like Passan went on was Blair and Barker, and he said no first baseman ever gets $300 million. And then he went back on there and said, I will take that back. I got texts from multiple executives telling me that I'm an idiot. So they're gonna have to pay Vladdy, and we've had the extension conversation before with him. But my goodness, they need to get this guy signed.
Yeah, I like. I mean, he's earned himself. Is it safe to say he's probably earned himself like 50 to $100 million this year?
Oh, easy. Well, like I think about it, we had the exact same question. I think in April or May where we were like, has he lost himself 100 million? And he's made himself 100 million. Like he is this year flung from, probably coming into the year, you were probably talking, oh, you probably have to pay him 300 million. I don't really want to do that. And then after April, you're like, oh, maybe you can get him for 200 million, but do you even want to give him 200 million? And now you're like, can you get him for 300 million? Or is he going to be asking for 3.5? Like, this is a guy that is at the pinnacle of his value right now. And you never want to pay for a guy at the peak of their value necessarily, but based on how things have gone this season for the Blue Jays, based on the uncertainty of this Blue Jays team going into 2025 and beyond, this is a guy they need to prioritize getting a deal done with.
Yeah, we were talking about it, and I think the Blue Jays have been much more watchable since the trade deadline. I think that's fair to say, and they've been playing better, right? Like it's been more competitive. Obviously, the A's series wasn't as competitive as or not as great as they had kind of been playing before when they're, keeping up with the Yankees, beating the Orioles in a series. But when you look at the Blue Jays hitting stats since the All-Star break. And so obviously that is a little bit leading up to the trade deadline and everything like that. But when you look at their hitting stats leading up to the All-Star break, or sorry, coming out of the All-Star break, the only hitters with a WRC plus above 100 are Vlad, who's this 291, Addison Barger 129, Dalton Varsho 111, and that's not including Justin Turner and Will Wagner and Luis De Los Santos. But what that does do is, to me, it shows me that this dude has completely changed the level of play on the field for the Blue Jays, right? Like, I mean, it just shows
it's
you
a totally different team.
it just
totally
shows you how when he's at his best, how they are better.
Yeah,
Because when
and it's
he
how they're
wasn't,
built.
yeah, I mean, so you have him playing well, but you are also lacking the pieces around him playing well, right? And so, like, if you have those pieces playing well, they're probably winning a lot more often in those games that are like close, but at least they're competitive based on the fact that he is at an all-time career high level for him, right?
He's
So,
Vlad again. That's it. That's the end of the conversation as far as who is he? He's Vlad
yeah.
again, right? So now that you are pretty certain that he's Vlad again, you've got to get something done.
I mean, do you put any stock into the online Twitter arguments that this streak is conveniently timed with the Blue Jays selling off and giving up on the season?
I think a month and a half ago I would have said no, but I mean, I've had conversations, I've heard from others that he's apparently maybe not, it's not a coincidence per se. So, I mean, I don't know what to believe as far as maybe it is for him. It's just easier to do it when the when the lights aren't brightest. We've always kind of seen him wanting to be the guy, and whenever he's wanted to be the guy, the struggles have promptly followed. So, I mean, I I think it's mostly just coincidental timing, but I don't necessarily
There's the
disagree.
whispers in the back of the head.
Yeah,
They're
yeah. There's some voices in the
like
back of your head.
obviously
It's curious.
obviously the high leverage numbers are great. The like basically any number that you want to look at that like suggests in-game leverage suggests that he is totally fine when the pressure's higher. But that also comes at a difference. Like, I mean, how is that, that when you're up in the ninth inning with a 1-1 game in a season where it doesn't really matter if you win or lose versus when you're in a playoff race. Like, I mean, there's a difference in those at bats, right? So I think the whispers are there for sure, and I am just totally not worried about it.
And
I
you know
just
what? I
think
think that's the
like
right attitude. That's the right attitude, in my opinion.
I think you look at it and he gets pitched really tough, and just the way that he's been locked in, and you just watch his at bats. I just think that it doesn't matter what's going on around him right now. Like there's so many moving parts in this Blue Jays organization right now, and he's been just kind of like that stabilizing force that's given them the basically the only thing to not really have any worries about. And I don't think that that would change depending on how the Blue Jays or where the Blue Jays are in the standings.
Yeah, totally. And I get it. Like I agree in terms of just him being just the stabilizing force. It'd be nice if this was happening a year or two ago when the Blue Jays were maybe a little bit more of a competitive baseball team.
Yes, it definitely would be nice if this was like in the middle of a lineup that was pushing them towards the playoffs, but sometimes you just you just gotta take what you can get and run. And I mean, it's kind of funny because obviously the story of the Blue Jays season is the disappointment of what's transpired. But I think that the Vlad resurgence has been perhaps the like not the 1A story, but like the number two story by far, and as far as like what he's been able to do and establishing himself as the best hitter in the American League type player that he was supposed to be.
Totally. This is him reemerging as a face of the franchise level player and setting himself up to get paid. So the Blue Jays should be the ones that go ahead and do so.
Yeah, the extension talks are going to be interesting. I mean, that's obviously probably something that you don't get done until the off season, but you know, I think he's shown enough to earn that $300 million contract. And like we've talked about it, right? Like there's so much value to locking him up for like 10 or so years or however long you want to give him that deal for. Like if it's 300 over 12 or 300 over 13 or whatever. Like, I mean, he's 25 years old. Like you've got 7 more good years out of him, you
Oh,
know?
totally. This is a guy that's approaching, you know, his peak value if he's not at his peak value. This is not a guy that is on the wrong side of the aging curve.
Yeah. Like if you extend him. And even if you extend him and things go poorly over the next few years, he's going to be a guy that's going to bring people to the ballpark. He's going to sell jerseys. He's going to make you back that $300 million. It's like the Shohei Ohtani conversation that we had as to why you can give somebody that much money and have it be worth it, right?
And the
Now,
other thing too, but also like if it doesn't work with Vlad and you've extended him, then things have gone horrifically wrong regardless, right? I mean, you could redivest that money in better places in theory, but at this present point in time, right now, talking burn the hand, two in the bush, there's no better way to spend your
yeah,
money than to go and extend Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
I've made this point. I think I haven't made it on the podcast, but if they like, I mean, you can if you let Vlad and Bo walk, right? Like if you let both of them walk and your 2026, 2027 is built around George Springer's and Kevin Gossman's and like Spencer Horwitz, Davis Schneider, like that's probably not going to be a playoff team. And
You're winning 64 games.
you're
Like,
waiting
forget
for
it.
Arjun Namala to come up, right? But that's not even a guarantee. Like if
Yeah.
you let Vlad and Bo walk, you are subjecting yourself to becoming the Chicago White Sox,
Uh-huh. Totally.
where you have like the White Sox have dramatically improved their farm system. I'll say that, but the Blue Jays farm system isn't the best right now. So if you let Vlad and Bo walk, there's 3-4 years of darkness that could extend past 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. We could be talking Detroit Tigers.
Yes. Like you could be going into, obviously everybody points to like the Baltimore Orioles, the Houston Astros, but that's not for every Baltimore Orioles, Houston Astros successful rebuild. There is a Pittsburgh Pirates, there's a Colorado Rockies, there's a Chicago White Sox, you can point, there's an Oakland A's. There's so many of these franchises that have gotten these top picks and have been unable to transform that into major league success. So if you're the Blue Jays, I think locking up Vlad at least gives you something to be excited about and gives you sort of a baseline of expected success.
Yeah.
Um,
And also
while
don't forget too, with the MLB draft lottery now, I mean,
yeah, the White
Cleveland,
Sox, the White Sox are going to be picking 10th in this year's
yeah,
draft.
like, is it even worth it at this point?
Like the White Sox are going to be the worst baseball team of all time this year. I
Mhm.
think that they have to win like 23 of their last 40 games or something to avoid being the worst team of all time. And they haven't won 23 out of 43 games or whatever it is at all this year.
Yeah, this is a team that's not good.
And
But the
they
Blue Jays want to avoid that.
and they're not even going to be able to pick in the top five. I mean,
Yeah, like
both them and Oakland are picking outside the top
yeah, the
nine.
listen, the crux of the conversation is basically this is a Blue Jays team that is not designed really to win in the distant future. So you've got to try to win now. And Vlad is going to help you do that. So you need
Yes.
to go ahead and try to extend that window a little bit by extending him because if he walks, if Bo walks, you're left with a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah, I'm also kind of intrigued by the conversation of like, well, I mean, even if like you lose Bo and you have to go do a couple of years of a rebuild, like I mean, you keep Vlad in there, and then he's kind of the bridge piece from this era to like the Arjun Nimala era, right? And even if that's like the Arjun Nimala, Ethan Holiday, or whoever they get at next year's draft era, um, I think there's a lot of value in that. Like, I mean, just kind of having him being that dude for them for a long time is a very valuable aspect of a franchise to kind of lock in.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree. So again, just gotta
Just
get
do
that
it.
line sorted.
Just do
Gotta
it.
get just
It's
do
it's
it.
it's not our money, but do it.
Just do it.
Okay. Kind of curious for you. Like, I mean, I just mentioned obviously Ethan Holiday. Um, are you kind of on like rooting for them to lose the rest of the way to get those draft odds up?
I'm gonna root for the Blue Jays to lose, but I will say there's a lot less call it pent up frustration these days. This is not a team with expectations, and there's been some side effects of that, which have not all been negative.
Yeah, it's next year's draft is like pretty exciting, I think. Like obviously Ethan Holiday's the headliner, but like I love Jace Laviolette from Texas A&M, Cam Cannarella from Clemson. Like those are two really exciting college players. So I'm just like, you know, could be an exciting draft next
Not
year
the not the
if they
worst year, not the worst year to be terrible. Not the worst year to be terrible.
yeah, hopefully everybody's enjoying their tankathon lottery sims. Okay, before we go, like let's touch on the pitching a little bit because one of the concerning factors of the past few weeks in the Blue Jays performance has been the performance of Chris Bassett, Kevin Gossman, and Jose Barrios. Now, Barrios has been better in preventing runs recently, but he still has not been kind of the Jose Barrios that we saw at the beginning of the year. Are you concerned about these three guys being able to lead a playoff rotation in 2025?
I don't really know kind of what to say to this because the more I kind of think about it, the more I wonder what your options are, right? What's the alternative? Because you got
Well,
all three of
like
them locked in,
there
and
is no alternative, right? Like it's gonna be like they are gonna be pitching next year for the Blue Jays, and it could go very poorly.
yeah. Listen, like, do I think Gosden's going to get back to that top of the rotation level? No, but do I think he's as bad as he's been this year? Also, no. To me, I mean, you figure that the elbow injury from spring training, maybe he's been hurt. His velo's down, but a lot of the other peripheral stuff with him, like, seems like it's not like broken. It seems like he's just his fastball has just stopped being an effective pitch, right? So if he can get back to where he was, maybe take an off season of just healing, I think that'll go a long way towards realistically fixing this Blue Jay staff in a lot of ways, right? Because you're looking at him, Barrios again struggles this year, but you got to figure that at least there's a little bit more to be tapped out of him if his start of the year is anything to look at. Like I think you and I both agree that that was all a mirage, but I don't think he's this bad, and I think it goes for Bassett as well. We've seen some really good versions of Chris Bassett this year. That to me, I don't think he's as bad as a 7 ERA during what was it, the month of July, right? Like he's not this bad. So you would hope that at least two of those guys maybe turn into at least viable rotation guys. And you add in a Jake Bloss, then you add in maybe a guy from, free agency. You've got Rodriguez, you've got maybe Bowden Francis, figure something out. Like they'll have enough bodies to throw at the wall. You just need a couple of them to stick, and you're going to have to add a talented arm if you want this to be a team that goes anywhere. So as far as concern level with them, like it's high, but it's not off the charts high. It's more of a kind of, they're gonna need an offseason to reset, but when they come back for spring training 25, they're gonna have to show more 2023 than 2024 versions of themselves.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting conversation. It's kind of funny because as the three of them have kind of had their performance fluctuate since the All-Star break, Yariel Rodriguez and Bowden Francis have both been really good, which is a very positive sign to see both of them maybe establishing themselves as, if not a rotation piece for next year, at least a rotation depth. And I think Yariel has been excellent. I think he's going to be kind of locked into that rotation for the majority of his contract, which is a really exciting development because we didn't really know what he was going to be. And then Bowden Francis, I mean, like it's nice to see his stuff playing up a little bit more. I don't think he'll ever be much more than like a five and six inning type guy, and maybe just some rotation depth, but really nice to see him figuring some stuff out after the really rough start to the year. Back to Bassett, Gausman, and Barrios though. Gausman's strikeout rate is very concerning to me, like the way that it's dropped off this year. I think you totally nailed it with the weird start to the year for him and rushing back to make his first start through the rotation. And one thing that I've kind of considered is like, would you shut him down? Because like you think about it, right? Like you look at I think it was last year where they pointed out all the guys that threw over 200 innings in 2022 really struggled in 2023. Alek Manoah. And for Gausman, where in 2023, he threw almost a career high and he's coming off like 3 straight years of 170 innings plus. Like, is there a little bit of fatigue in there from 3 straight years of like being a dude and a dude who goes deep into games? So I wonder if there would be any value in shutting him down at like 150 innings this year and
Would
kind of
he would
saying,
he do that though is the question. And also who's pitching?
well, I mean, like that's where you kind of give some other guys a shot, right? Like that's where you let Gausman get you through August, and then you bring up Jake Bloss to take his spot in the rotation. But then also, like, I mean, what kind of, I know that all these dudes are like very proud of taking the mound every time through the rotation and like helping out the bullpen and working deep into games. So obviously, you don't want to like send that message that that's not important. Um, but I just wonder like if it would help him in 2025. I think it would be a realistic conversation to have where if you can get him back to closer to his top five Cy Young self than whatever he has been this year. I really do think that that's would be a conversation worth having.
Yeah, I guess to me, if he's open to that idea, then I don't see the downside because to me, he was hurt in spring training and kind of not that great this year. Like if there's nothing left to play for, right? Like just the Blue Jays need him to be a top of the rotation starter if they want to be good next year.
If their priority is
And
2025,
yeah,
then what is a month of starts going to do for him? Like that's what, 4 starts,
nothing.
4 or 5
So
starts.
to me, you go to him and you go, "Are you open to this idea?" And if he's not, then he's not, and he's pitching. But like he's gonna get nothing out of these last 4 starts. Like I'll tell you,
Yeah.
like there's
Yeah.
nothing really to be gained.
Like I think, I mean, obviously this is total speculation from us here. Like I don't think that I haven't even heard anybody mention this until, we've had this conversation, but um I just really do think that it would be, if your intent is to contend in 2025, then you need to be prioritizing 2025, and 5 more starts for Kevin Gossman in September aren't gonna help you in 2025, I don't
No,
think.
no. So it's probably in their best interest I don't know if it's in Kevin Gausman's best interest, but
I
if
mean,
he's hurting, then there's no reason not to.
like, is he concerned about his climb up the career strikeout leaderboard? Or
Probably not.
um, I think it's a different conversation for Bassett and Barrios. So obviously Bassett, I don't think that you could talk him into doing that. Like, he seems like the dude that would absolutely never do that. And then Barrios, I think, just kind of like he's on pace for like 200 innings or
Yeah, he
something
hasn't missed a
something
start
around there.
in I think it was since, well, definitely as a Blue Jay, I don't think he's missed a start, but I think it goes beyond that. Like, this is a guy that goes out there every fifth day. They're
Yeah.
both kind of workhorse guys, so there's value to be had in that. But
And they haven't thrown as much in the last 3 years as Gosman has. Bassett, obviously, he reached the 200 inning mark last year, but I think for a guy who like he hasn't reached the same inning totals as
totally,
Gosman did leading
yeah,
into this year.
totally.
So I think that you'd be okay there. Kind of curious to get your thoughts on the Chris Bassett start the other day, where he gives up 6 runs in the first inning and then after the game is blaming the roof being closed.
Oh man, I thought we finished this. I thought already Dickey was in a Blue Jay anymore. I have no comment. I just don't have a comment. This is the big leagues, brother. I don't know what to tell you. You've pitched with the dome closed. I don't know what to tell you.
Like, I very much respect pitchers, being unique and like having quirks, and
But this is so unlike him
but
too,
it's
right? To make this kind of excuse is so unlike him, I feel like.
yeah, I thought it was weird seeing that come out.
It was a little strange.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair to leave it at that. Okay, let's touch on Jake Bloss before we go, because he made his organizational debut over the weekend, throwing 2 2/3, 2 strikeouts, 3 hits, 1 walk, no runs. Yeah, he'll probably be up in September. I mean, very interesting to me, like to see them have him on that pitch limit after he comes over in the trade, and probably, I guess, the couple weeks away from pitching after the trade and everything. Kind of makes sense to have him on the pitch limit. Anything you took away from his outing, and what you think we can expect from him in the next few weeks?
I mean, we looked at the start on Statcast. A lot of command issues. It seemed like with some of his pitches. I think the fastball you pointed to as a pitch that was a little bit concerning. I almost like defer to you because you said you watched the start. Like, what did you see?
Yeah, no, I like, yes, there were some fastballs left over the heart of the plate. Yeah, like, I mean, it was all right. Like, I mean, I think command issues, like, probably not really command issues, like that's kind of what he's known for, right? So I thought he worked the zone fairly well, like pounded the zone with the fastball. I thought the breaking stuff looked good. I liked the sweeper, like the slider. I mean, he throws the slider really hard, which is cool, like seeing guys like touch 90-91 with the slider. So I thought encouraging start. Obviously didn't give up some runs. He made an error, threw a ball away, threw it past Joey Votto at first base. But yeah, like, I mean, a fine enough start. I definitely can understand why people have put the ceiling as like a mid rotation starter. I just don't think the stuff play is that of an ace. But yeah, he's got good enough stuff. He's got good enough command. He's got a decent pitch mix. I think he's exciting enough of a pitcher. And I think, yeah, like we mentioned at the time of the trade, he was rushed to the majors, so he's still got some developing to do for sure.
Yeah, so we'll see exactly what happens as far as what he brings to this year's Blue Jay squad, but you figure he'll eventually get a shot.
Yeah, I think, like we mentioned, he's probably a September guy. Maybe they go to his 6-man rotation to keep Bowden and Yariel going, and give him his shot. So it'll be fun to watch. I mean, he's a new toy, and it would be, I think, fairly interesting if all three pieces in the Kikuchi trade were in the major leaguers this season.
Yeah, we'll see exactly how all of them perform, but we'll take that. Take that.
Yes, it'll be it hopefully he continues on the Will Wagner trajectory.
And not so much slow Perfino.
Okay. Final thing. I know I keep on saying one last thing. Joey Votto, 10 seconds, go.
It's cool that he's in AAA. I mean, it kind of sounds like they can't afford to bring him up, but if they could find a way, it would be fun if he was on the big league club.
They're playing the Reds soon.
That seems like a good as time as any.
All right. Well, with that, that's going to do it for us here today at the Bird's Eye View podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to follow and review wherever you get your podcasts. Hit the subscribe and like buttons. If you're watching on YouTube, you can follow us there at the Bird's Eye View pod. You can follow us all on Twitter. I am at Worden_Zach. Jori is at Jori Negin-Shecter, and the pod is at BEV_pod. Thank you so much for listening and enjoy the games this week.